You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it begins once again. Yes, it is time to commence our broadcast week here on the old OIRN. It is time to kick things off with episode 1 of the bi-weekly options extravaganza, known as the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name is Mark Longo from the aforementioned network, as well as, of course, on the ever-exciting theoptionsinsider.com. All sorts of new fun, new wrinkles, new evolutions coming to you folks every week here. You want to stay on top of it all, want to get all of that content coming into your ear holes, going even above and beyond the network. You want to get the exclusive shows. Well, you know where to go. Theoptionsinsider.com/plus or /pro will explain it all to you there. /shop will show it side by side, make it easier for you to understand exactly what each one does and what you need. You want a little bit more, you like to engage with the live, and that's kind of your main focus. And plus is a good place for you if you want to go above and beyond, and you want to go beyond what the network even has. You want to engage even more with some exclusive shows than Pro is. If you want to say hello to all the new folks who join us here right before showtime, new folks coming in here, including Kyle and Kent and Freddie, and we got, looks like Paul floating in there coming in as well. So hello to all the new folks. Hello to all the regulars as well. We love you all. If you haven't joined us, if you're just listening after the fact, we love you too. We love everybody here on the network. Remember, however you listen, if you're listening live, you can engage with us through the live chat, including the members hotline for all of our members there. So you get bumped to the top of the list. You're listening after the fact, you can hit us up via all the usual platforms, including social media, email, all that fun stuff. However you listen, live after the fact, Pro, Plus, whatever, wherever you find yourself on the spectrum out there these days, keep hitting us up, keep rating and reviewing. It really does help all the new folks continue to discover the content on all of the various venues out there. Remember, we do love to hear from all of you out there. And let's see who we're hearing from on the program today. Let's go on out now first to a place that is always dark, always stormy. Actually, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's just kicking off the week, listeners. We gotta get the ball rolling properly. And the way to do that is with the much ballyhooed, controversial, difficult, proven to be a very difficult game, even for the guy who requested it, Uncle Mike. Yes, it is time to kick things off with our guess, that 80s wrestlers entrance music game. Here we go. right. We can keep that one going. It's kind of a fun one, actually. I can listen to that one for a little bit, but we got to dive on into the show proper. First, let's go out. He is a reigning, defending 80s Wrestlers guessing game champion, primarily because he requested it. Even though this game has proven, I would think he would admit, much more difficult than he anticipated when he first suggested it. Of course, I am talking about the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, A, welcome back to the program. And B, can you name that 80s wrestler, sir?
Oh, thank you for the welcome. It's always a pleasure to be here, especially on a Monday. But I have to admit, this one's kind of tough for me, so I'm going to throw out a flyer. Sometimes my flyers come in, but I'm going to go with Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig.
Wow. I will not say yes or no just yet. I'll say no, because you have to know that that's not right. But I won't say exactly who it is yet, because we do have one other player, even though I would be stunned, nay, floored, if he gets it, as I am heading on out now to the dark and stormy compound known as the GIOVINAZZI Fortress, where we are joined once again by the Rock Lobster himself, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, A, welcome back to the program. And B, do you have any insight into who that may? I'll give you a hint. You can probably tell from that music. This guy's on the dark side. We're going evil this week. And he may or may not, I'm just going to say, he may or may not be inextricably linked with the good guy that we played last week. I'm just putting it out there.
I was feeling some like harem sort of vibe from this music, like a little.
Yes, go with that. Well, what are you feeling there? You're almost on it.
And I can't think of any guy, so I would invent a guy. Just call him the Sultan of
second
SWAT.
guess now.
Are you kicking yourself now, Uncle Mike?
Sultan of SWAT.
I want to give. If it has to do with the harems, then I'm going to go with Rick Rude.
Rick Rude, no. Harem. Oh, no. Camel Clutch.
He was
the Iron Sheik.
He was the world's sexiest man.
The Iron Sheik. The Iron Sheik. They probably one of the most infamous bad guys of 80s wrestling. Sergeant Slaughter would come out all America. He'd have the Marine Guard. He'd have the flag. He's in the G.I. Joe cartoon. And who would he fight? Of course, the evil, conniving Iron Sheik with his Camel Clutch. Just iconic good guy versus bad guy pairing. Later on, of course, you got Nikolai Volkov in there, all sorts of other fun 80s oriented bad guys. But when you think of classic good guy, bad guy pairings, Sergeant Slaughter versus the Iron Sheik, they don't get much more iconic than Uncle Mike. I don't know. You suggested this game. I'm throwing you some kind of softballs in there. And so far, not so much. What are your thoughts, listeners? What are your thoughts on Uncle Mike's performance? Let us know as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading. Okay, our members are listening live. They are mocking you, Uncle Mike, including Mr. Unlimited. He knew right away. He said, "Ha, Iron Sheik." He said, "Wow, it's an Arabian song. It's such a giveaway." Yeah, I thought it was a giveaway too. Once you hear that, even Andrew, who didn't know what he was talking about, he knew he was drawn in that same direction. He said harem. He was halfway there. Arab harem. It's all part of that thing. And then Uncle Mike goes and guesses Rick Rude. These are the times we live in, listeners. This is what I'm working with here. So pity me. All right, let's keep on rolling here into the show proper. And coming into showtime, it seems like the markets seem like they kind of had a bit of a direction they wanted to go in earlier in the session. Now it seems like things are getting a little bit more mixed. We're kind of breaking things up out there a little bit, because coming into showtime, we have the NASDAQ still up, but not quite up as much as it was, up about 0.6% right now. S&P was kind of was up a little bit, flirting with unch. Now it's actually off a little over 0.1%. And the Dow, kind of the polar opposite of the NASDAQ, off about a little over 0.6%, about 0.2% to the dark side. So kind of a mixed day. It depends where you hang your hat out there, what kind of day you're having out there. That means the vol products, after kind of a bit of a interesting start, are starting to tick up a wee bit. VIX is up a little bit more, over 16, about 16.15, puts it up almost a half a point, about 0.4 of a point from where it was this time last week. VVIX, aka the vol of vol. It was at about a 107.5 to kick off the show. That puts it actually pretty much literally unched from where it was this time last show on Thursday. Our old friend VXX, 29.25, ticking up a little bit north of that now, about 29.30. So that actually puts it unched from last show as well, which if it's not eroding, that means it's actually inhaling a little bit out there. So an interesting day out there in VXX. Will we go back north of the 30 handle? Will we kind of hang out here? Will we continue to trend lower once things settle out? We shall find out. And Vol Q, aka the NASDAQ Vol, at about a 16.25. That's up about a quarter from last show. All right. I guess actually technically the Rock Lobster was closest because he did say the harem thing. So I guess we'll have to go out to the land of the Rock Lobster first. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, what is lighting up your tape and the tape of Volman? And if you have any enduring impressions of the Iron Sheik, have at it, sir.
You know what? Once you said that name, it did ring a bell somehow. I'm still trying to remember how I even saw 80s wrestling guy. I guess because they just sort of
it was inescapable back then. Everybody knew who the Iron Sheik and Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk. It was just the thing back then. You could not escape it, sir. Even you could not escape it deep in the far hinterlands of Maine.
So at least I was paying attention to the theme music. At least that makes one of your co-hosts paying attention to the theme music. But I'm going to let that rest. Yes, we have. Okay, so on any normal world, except we're still in COVID land, where the S&P 500 isn't doing much, the Qs are up almost 1%, and VIX actually was even on the day at some point, and now is up around 79 cents. All I can say, folks are buying puts. What are you going to say? I don't know why or how or what the reason is or blah blah blah. Other than that, the markets are very expensive, and literally buying anything that is related to semiconductor, like NVIDIA all-time high. Almost every stock related to semiconductors is ripping, and they're selling everything else, like commodity stocks, old industry, pretty much across the board. So I find that all. I guess it's what it is, right? It's it's just what that day is, and I guess it's a day with a Y in COVID land because again we're at a S&P 500 at very close to all-time highs, and VIX is kind of moving up now. I think we erased a lot of the weekend effect this morning. But it appears a little bid is coming back, and a little bit of a bid in the vol products as I'm watching this. VXX is now so the futures are definitely up. So there's a little bid for the futures now without question. So that's a flip from this morning when they were definitely lower on the day. And some of the puts I have they're down a little bit. I don't have many left, but certainly enough where I'm still watching them, and so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I mean, there is some potential shenanigans going on in the metals markets for gold. But other than that, the only thing I will say though is I think another country wants to adopt Bitcoin as a currency. And Coinbase is up almost 7%. It was up 7, almost 8% today. So again, those are pretty big moves for underlying. You got a 7% move up. Coinbase only 45 vol. So at least on today's candle, the vol is not that expensive. And I did dabble a little bit this morning. I spent the first 45 minutes trying to buy a couple of calls. Finally got filled. I was a little grumpy. Then it kept going up after that, which is okay. But hard to fill early in the morning, so it did feel like it was going up. So that is, at least where some dollars are going, that's where it appears. And, and today on a day where the VIX futures really shouldn't be higher, to be honest, they are. So that's always something, right? When vol should be going down and it's going up, that's always a signal for everybody to just kind of, take stock of what you're doing and and maybe close somebody along, something like that. But certainly it's a day where it definitely feels like a big rotation day. Like everybody was hot on the commodities, the infrastructure deal. Now all of a sudden there was some talk this weekend. So they're selling commodities, buying semiconductors. So that's what it appears. And that little bit of churn is pushing VIX up. And the only thing I can think of is that someone out there somewhere is buying some puts in the SPX.
I find it hard to believe, sir, that you got grumpy after missing a fill. I can't picture that in my head at all, sir.
Yeah. And then, of course, I did a spike trade, and the spike trade made a lot of money, and I closed it. So do that.
These are all good lessons to pass on to our audience here. Trade for spites. It will get grumpy and then trade angry, and then all good things will happen to you. See what happens when you're isolated over there in the shores of Maine, listeners. Crazy things abound. Now let's go a little bit closer to home, to the land of St. Charles, where I got to admit, Uncle Mike, after suggesting this game and really being excited and fired up about it, we've given him, we haven't really gone super crazy exotic. We've done some primary movers and shakers of the 80s wrestling scene, Sergeant Slaughter, Iron Sheik, and all the other ones. We did Hulk Hogan not too long. It doesn't get more mainstream than that. Uncle Mike's having a little bit more trouble than I anticipated. Uncle Mike, sir, our audience was getting it. They were screaming out. Even our producer was kind of, I don't tell them ahead of time. They were trying to guess, and they were along the right track like the Rock Lobster was, even if they didn't have the right name. Then I gave you a second chance with the Harrow. I thought for sure you're going to get it there, and you went Rick Rude. So, Uncle Mike, what do you have to say for yourself today, sir?
I've missed two. So I appreciate the high expectation with what I'm getting, but I think I missed the Ultimate Warrior and I've missed the Sheik. And so I've been pretty good overall with this. So I appreciate the fact that you have such a high expectation for me, but I don't think I've missed that many. So, I mean, I'm not perfect. And so, well, I did truly love 80s wrestling. I do have to admit, it's kind of tough to be in the hot seat with the theme songs. It is harder than I thought. But I don't think I've missed that many.
You got some weekend homework to do, sir. You got to hit like the main themes and just go through them to refresh yourself so you're ready for next Monday, sir.
All right, I'll see what I can do. But, I mean, at least the truth came out about the Road Warriors being the greatest tag team of all time, according to our audience.
Oh, I'm sorry. How did you get muted again? It's so crazy how that happens around these times whenever you're speaking about this team that no folks really are interested in. And if you said like Demolition, then I could see why, folks would be listening to. So since I said Demolition, I think I've now fixed your problem. Can we hear you again? Uncle Mike, are you there?
Yeah, the Road Warriors are the best. So anyway, in terms of these markets, with where we're at with it, I think it's definitely kind of a rotation day in that I think the Iron Sheik has been shorting his oil futures because he is over there in the Middle East. So I think he went short oil because we're definitely down today in the oil world. But if you look at the sectors of the markets in general, energy and financials are what's holding this market down today. And by down, meaning pretty much flat. The S&P is down roughly 5 points as I'm reading this. And so we're relatively flat on the day. We started off higher, then we did go down a little bit, but the main sectors that are coming down are the financials as well as energy. And with the financials, we do have a move in the bonds. The treasuries are up on the day. I follow IEF. IEF is up 45 cents on the day, which is a relatively big move for IEF. And so we are getting some push to the upside in the treasury bond world. But in reality, it had pulled back from where it was. And in reality, we've had roughly a 1% to 2% range over the course of the last couple of months with this since it dropped initially. So I think ultimately that is what's holding down the market at this point. I think we are having some rotation issues, if you will, with the Iron Sheik shorting all of those oil futures over there. So that's what I'm seeing at this point in time. We did briefly make all-time highs, and so on the S&P. So we are still near the really close to the upside with this. And so I think that the next big barrier or the next key number that we have in the all-time high land of the S&P, we were up high at one point today in the SPX at 4288. Can we reach out to 4,300 at some stage in the day today? And that's a 20-point move. It's 0.5% or less than 0.5%. from where we are right now. So we can definitely do that. It's definitely doable even today for that matter. And so I think that being the next key number with which we have, it's pretty important to look at when going through these all-time highs. The other thing with which to look at in the commodity realm, Andrew had mentioned some shenanigans possibly going on in the gold world. Silver is relatively flat right now. Looking at SLV, we have pretty much no movement on it. We're up 3 cents on the day as I look at this. And with that, there's really not a lot of movement in gold either, per se. But with that, we do not have a ton of movement in the precious metals at this stage. So I think to kind of sum it up is that we have a rotation going on today. And of course, as we always say, there's more sellers than buyers when the market's down and buyers and sellers when the market's up. There's more sellers than buyers today, of course, but where the sellers are in the energy realm as well as the financials, and where the buyers are in the technology realm. Just looking at it, Qs are actually up $3 on the day. So there is some money flowing into technology. It's just flowing out of energy and financials.
All right, let's see what is moving and shaking out there. By the way, Uncle Mike, our live audience here, not giving you any breaks here. I said I gave you a second chance, but they corrected me and said, no, you didn't give Uncle Mike a second chance. He took that second chance with confidence and still missed Iron Sheik. So they're throwing you under the bus a little bit. Obviously, the live audience, Uncle Mike, they're demanding. They expect higher quality from you, sir.
What can I say? I mean, that's why St. Charles Wealth Management is the company with which it is today, is because the standard with which I have to live up to is this you as a host and this audience. So bring it. It makes me better. I love it. I welcome it.
All right, we're gonna throw it down. We're gonna throw down the gauntlet next week with something crazy. I thought this one would be especially because we did Sergeant Slaughter last week. Iron Sheik is like his polar opposite out there. But let's see. Maybe we'll throw a wrench. We'll see if Uncle Mike did some prepping over the weekend, listeners. We shall see. Let's see what's lighting up out there from the overall market perspective today as well, listeners. Coming into right now, not a heck of a lot going on out there in the major, and particularly in the vol products out there. Not a heck of a lot lighting it up at all in VIX land right now. 138,000 contracts on the tape in VIX as of a few minutes ago. The ADV still under 500,000, about 489,000 out there. SPY doing a little bit better, 1.8 million. So it's over half of its ADV right now, which is about 3.5 million. That ADV has come in substantially. So I'd expect that to probably start ticking up again if this volume pattern can continue. We get a little bit more than half the ADV by showtime here. The S at about 700,000. That's where it usually is this time of day. The ADV about 1.25 million. So that's still looking pretty firm out there. The Qs, 727,000, on pace to outdistance their ADV, which is a little bit north of 1.1 million out there right now. And small caps, at least through the IWM lens, at about 286,000 contracts. The ADV, 570,000 out there. Now let's move on out to the part of the markets that have been the most fascinating, the most topsy-turvy, the most kind of head-scratching these days of late. The top 10 most actives. What are you crazy slinging out there? Because you're not really slinging a ton of major indexes, so something else is obviously on fire. And it's single names. Those are actually pretty active again today. We've got, it's over 300,000 to break into the top 10 right now. It's impressive. It's been a while since we've seen 300K for number 10. That gets you to Carnival Cruise Lines, 302,000 contracts on the tape for them. So cruise season seems like it's finally kicking off again here in the U.S., even though there was some bad news, I think, a couple of weeks ago with that first cruise ship over here in the U.S. They came back with a couple of COVID positives. Not a good start, but apparently the cruise industry is looking optimistic because they're putting up some numbers out there today. Let's see how Carnival is looking. Carnival, actually, the stock is selling off a little over $2 or about 7% to about 26 and change. That's an interesting kind of coming back down after they have been trending north. Back at the start of the year in January, they were about, looks like about $20, and they rallied all the way up to almost, about 31.5 or so back in June. So obviously they're coming down the other side of that now, down to about a 26, but good for 302,000 contracts out there in Carnival land. Number 9, also traveling, but in a different direction. We're talking space, aka Virgin Galactic, going up for 306,000 contracts out there. So some pretty hot action. I know they recently, excuse me, I think they got approved by the FAA to do their first tourist space flights out there. So that stock on the move quite a bit. This one, at the beginning of the year, let's go back a little bit. Beginning of the year, this thing was trading 23 and about a half. It rallied up in February to about 54 and a half, which is pretty much exactly where it is right now. Then it sold off hard, and May 13th, a little over a month ago, was trading 15 and a half. And then in the last month and change, this thing has really shot north. In particular, of the last week, as it got its approval, it was trading 40 a week ago, and now up to 54, 55, up to almost 56 today. So yeah, it's been an interesting turnaround just in the past month and a half for Virgin Galactic out here. Big run for them. Number 8, Palantir, kind of one of our stalwarts in the top 10. 335,000 contracts on the tape. Number 7, it's Viacom. I haven't heard from them in a little while, but they're back on the tape today. 357,000 contracts on the tape for Viacom, and the stock is up about 5% today. It's a nice little run for them, up to 46. Number 6, it's the aforementioned NVIDIA. Chips hot, chips on fire out there, and it's good for 362,000 contracts out here. Interestingly enough, we don't see the counterpoint to that. Usually when we see AMD up here, when we see NVIDIA up here, we see AMD as well, but not so much today. Instead, it's this new kid on the block of the last couple of weeks. It's Wish, a.k.a. Context Logic, good for number 5. 432,000 contracts on the tape. Number 4, NEO. We're already over 500,000 now. NEO, number 4, 533,000 contracts. So there's some paper today in single names. Index is not where the action is today. Number 3, it's our old friend AMC. Still lighting up the tape. Let's see where it is right now. About $57, up about a little over 3 or nearly 6% right now. Still good for 679,000 contracts. And the number 3 spot on our top 10. You know what number 2 and number 1 are. Number 2, it's Tesla, 758,000. Number 1, it's the fruit company, Apple, 816,000 contracts. Kind of light for Apple this time of day, but enough to top the list here on a pretty hefty day. Let's look really quickly where our biases lurk in this paper. Tesla is actually one of the lowest we've seen for a while. It's 56% calls, 44% puts. Usually everything in our top 10 is at least in the 70s. So that's interesting. That might be a new low. And on the high end, looks like Viacom with 84% of the call paper. Actually, it's tied with Wish. Viacom and Wish, both 84% coming on the call side of the ledger. So interesting stuff afoot here. Not a ton of interesting stuff afoot, really, on the earnings front. We're getting ready to reset the calendar, reset the clock here, listeners, with new earnings move results, and earnings season reports. We do have some names still popping off this week, including Micron and Bed Bath & Beyond. Both of those actually popping off on the same day on Wednesday. Let's look at them really quickly. These new reports coming in right before showtime here. For these, Bed Bath & Beyond will start there, popping off on the 30th after the bell. They're right around $29 when this report was run. They were pricing in $4.25. In the past, they moved $4. So actually a little bit extra juice. Is that dangerous territory in this day and age? You could maybe say that it is. So we'll pay attention to that. Of course, maybe there'll be another Nike and they'll rip the cover off the ball. We shall see. Then we've also got Micron there on the 30th. Everything in that sector is kind of hot and heavy these days. Trading $82, pretty much even as of this report. They were pricing in $4.51. In the past, they moved $4.99. That seems like a more reasonable bet, given everything we've seen out there on the earnings front. And as we move into the tail portion of the season, looks like we're settling out here at about a 74% average for the season. This past week was the worst. Actually, I take it back. It was second worst. This past week was 62%. The worst was actually week 2 at 51%. That was just a nightmare for vol buyers. Week 3 was 65%. Week 4, 81%. Week 5 was 96%, and then week 1 was 78%. All that averaging out to about a 74% here. They profiled 951 firms reporting so far. And not a lot of love for vol buying. But you know what there always is love for, listeners? It's the Eye of Sauron. So let's unleash it.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's get to it. Let's unleash the Eye of Sauron. Let's see where it casts its fiery gaze today. I like days where the Eye of Sauron, I mean, we like our AMCs and everything else out there, but you guys know those ones. We like to look sometimes a little bit farther afield and see if we can find some diamonds in the rough. It seems like what we did today, Mr. Rock Lobster, if there's a bit of a theme for today's Odd Block, it seems like aggressive premium overwriting. Let's just put it that way. Let's go on out now to our first name. I'm trying to think if this is a newcomer. If it's not, we have not talked about them in quite some time. This is Service Corp International. They are a funeral home supplier. So there you go. Boom times during a pandemic, you would think. All right. A year ago, they were trading, by the way, ticker symbol SCI. A year ago, they were trading 38.5. So pretty low. They're about 52.5 right now. So pretty substantially lower than they are right now. They rallied up to about 48 in August of last year, then kind of sold off again down to about 40. And then they rallied again by November. They were trading about 50. And they hung out there for a while until February. They got up to about 54 or so. Then gave it up again down to 46, and then slowly rallied again until May to about 50, almost 57. And then they kind of have been vacillating in this 57 to 52 range for pretty much the last, couple of months out here. And we find ourselves on the lower end of that range right now, 52.5 out there. A little bit of a sell-off today, off about 2.25%. So what did our Eye of Sauron find out here in this? Actually, this is not a name we've talked about before because the ADV is 160. So it's very rare we're going to find a name like this on our Eye of Sauron. But we found it today, which makes it interesting. They do 160 contracts a day, but someone said, you know what? I'm coming in and I don't care about that ADV because I'm going to blast away on the AUG double calls, a.k.a. the AUG 55 calls, 4,900 times for $1. That was pretty much the bid. These were $1 at 135. And this individual came in and crushed these over 5,000. I think more went up a little bit after, so like 5,500, something like that, which is a ton of paper for a name that does 160 contract, 35x their ADV out there today coming into showtime. So a pretty impressive day here for Service Corp International. If you're wondering, that is a 21 vol. So again, you wouldn't expect a name like this to have a huge vol, and it doesn't. 21 vol. They still got a pretty hefty premium. This is only going out to August. These are about $2.50 out of the money right now. They were closer, obviously, when the stock went up. The stock went up. It was 53.25, so a little bit higher, about 60 cents higher when they sold these. So they were playing a little bit fast and close to the fire out there. This thing could move. The ADV the volume or the price topped out this year over the past year, about 57, close to it, 56.86. So 55 strike. Not outside of the realm of possibility, but this person getting a pretty hefty dose of juice for it, getting a clean $1. If you're wondering why they got so much juice, it's because the earnings are baked into this. Earnings are on July 28th. So this is an earnings overwrite here as well, which makes it more interesting. Someone drawing that line in the ceiling, Mr. Rock Lobster, at the 55 strike, this far and no farther. And if it hits that, they don't mind dumping it at 56, and given this recent history, I can't really argue with them. That's not a bad level out there. And if it all hangs out, they get about 2% through August, or pretty close to it. So it's not an enormous vol, but it's not nothing, especially for a funeral home manufacturer. And they're getting a decent amount of juice. Mr. Rock Lobster, what are your thoughts on playing a little bit close to the fire here with an aggressive call overwrite for some pretty serious size in SCI, sir?
You know what? This brings me back to my youth. Do you know why?
Funeral homes bring you back to your youth? That's scary.
Well, because I used to trade a stock called Lowencorp way back when, which was a giant, a guy, Roger Lowen, I think, tried to corner the market in funeral homes in Canada. It was like one of the hottest stocks for the summer of, 95 or 96 or something like that. And it all kind of came crashing down on him. I think he over-leveraged. Anyway, and I don't know if it became Service Corp or Service Corp bought the company out or whatever. I'm sure he ended up doing okay, but yes. So this to me, like, it just has, if that guy's still around, he's, why not write some calls and make a little money on a big equity investment? So I thought there was a rather large individual holder in here. That's what made me think of this. So yes, of course I like to argue with you any chance I get, but The aggressive buy right here at like zero vol looks like an interesting trade. And strangely enough, that was one of my better stocks. I bought an in the money call calendar for even money about 2,000 times, I think.
It's not a bad one. Cost you some commissions.
And I think, and that's when actually, and then after that, Lowen kind of fell apart. So the value of the synthetic went up like $3 or $4. And of course, I remember Susquehanna. They just came late to the trade, and they demanded that they get in.
I was going to say they probably wanted their piece. They wanted their 40%.
They totally did, and so I think I ended up just I don't know. Howard, God rest his soul, was a decent guy, Howard Ring. So sure, Howard, and he was happy. So anyway, long story from long ago, but anyway, that's my backstory on this one. And yes, it does look like, again, 24 vol synthetic August 55, right near the money. It's not a stock that moves a whole lot, but as history, they can move. They can move, and at low vol, doesn't take much to make money. So I think the buy rider will be happy. They made $1, but I can think the side that took the other side might find a way to make some money on the summer.
I'm still thinking about how funeral home paper reminds you of your youth. That says a lot, listeners, about the rock lobster that we talk to every week out here. Let's keep on rolling. Let's see. Maybe this one will remind him of his youth as well. Next up on the odd block, spectacular here. I said we have a bit of a theme, kind of aggressively overriding premium. Next up, we have another newcomer to the odd block. I always like when you have some newcomers rotating in. This is CellSci Corp. This is a biotech that looks for drugs in cancer, autoimmune, and infectious diseases. So an immunotherapy biotech. Ticker symbol CVM. Trading right now $13.20. Kind of, This is the biotechs you've come to know and love, listeners. This one getting annihilated today off 47% or nearly $12. So yeah, this is the old school biotech we know and love here, listeners. Let's look at the sordid tale of the tape over the past year. A year ago wasn't trading that far away from where it is right now. 1573. It kind of bounced around in that range for a while until January of this year. Then it went from about 14 all the way up to 25 in one session from the 26th to the 27th of January. So that's kind of old school biotech paper. One day nearly doubling. Then the next day got up to about 27 and change. And then it sold off again. Looks like somewhere, it's saying to me there's somewhere in this time frame there was a 52-week high of nearly 41. I don't see it on this chart, so it must have been a crazy aggressive intraday print. It either happened in February or it sold off again in March down to 15 again. And then it rallied right back up to 27.5 again on April 27th. Sometime in that range, it also hit nearly 41. I don't really see where it was on this chart, but that's what the data is telling me here. Then it kind of bounced around in that range again, down to 19, up to 24.5, until today when it kind of went down the other side as well. $25 on the 25th on the close on Friday today, $13.18 where we find ourselves today. So, yeah, this one's getting annihilated. It's going to cause some interesting paper. What caught our eye, again, kind of similar to the aggressive overwrite here, AUG 25s coming in here. And that's so doubles on our last one, this time 25s. Still aggressively out of the money when the stock is $13 and can't find a bid. It's dropping like crazy. This thing went up. They went up for $1.10. They were actually got a little bit of a better fill than they were $1 bid. They sold them for $1.10, nearly 5,000 times, 4,500 times for the AUG 25. So that's not a bad bit of juice. The stock was $1 and change higher, $14.55 when it went up. By the way, if you're wondering, it was 156 volatility. That's the biotechs we know and love out here. There are earnings in the AUG cycle, though. It seems like whatever it was that crushed them today was pre-earnings. I'm guessing one of their treatments probably not that effective. Maybe they got kicked to the curb by the FDA. Either way, not a good day for them. So there are earnings baked into this AUG call, but this person got the 25s off for $1.10. I salute you, sir. That's not a bad run. Interestingly enough, also, Mr. Rocklobs, there was a sea of paper going up out here today, as you probably would expect. We also noticed someone earlier this morning, there was a sweep of the July 60s, 60 listeners, going up this morning about almost 400 times, 340 times here. A good chunk of them for $1.65. So that's going to leave a mark. Hopefully they sold these. They swept them on 13 exchanges. Let's see, where did the sweep start? It started at 165 on Amex out there. They got 5 lots out there, and then they went for 2 more, 150. But it's kind of all over the place. They actually got 222 off for 170. So let's hope they sold these. If they sold these, whoever sold these gets my salute of the day. They sold these 60s in July for $1.65. That's impressive. Again, this is biotech paper, listeners. It's selling off nearly 50% today, so kind of all bets are off. But still, this is some impressive paper. Mr. Rock Lobster, what are your thoughts on someone? I thought the 25s for $1.10 were impressive until I saw these July 60s for $1.65 this morning, sir. Some of them printing $1.70. Someone got some good juice in these, sir.
Well, the stock is down 50% today.
Yes, it is.
So this is some sort of biotech, something or other stock. Usually this is what they'll engage in the research of development of treatment of cancer for the immune system, which apparently does not work.
Apparently they're treating nothing because this thing's going down pretty hard.
It is not looking good. Again, this is another one where for users at home, like a lot of pro traders, they'll buy calls and sell stock and create the back spread. And, clearly you're going to pay, you don't mind paying $1 for the 145s, the 25s, if you can sell the stock at $25. So I guess I'm assuming that was earlier. Now, right now, the AUG 25s are $1. So maybe they're $1 now with the stock here. That's what I'm checking out right now.
Yeah, the stock was about $1 higher. It was like $14.55.
Okay. So that was a good purchase. And so that was that's a decent sale for a buy, right? So they're doing okay there. And as far as the 60s go, again, that must have been this morning, like a trader, hedging with stock into the big news. Again, another tough one because the calls are so far away from the money. This is just basically crazy spec paper on some news, wouldn't you say? As far as I can tell.
Yeah, if they bought those, then they're looking pretty rough right now. That level at any time, they never really got close to 60. So paying anything for those 60s, if they did buy those, it's crazy paper. But again, this is biotech getting cut in half. This is some of the paper you see going up out there. It does offer some opportunities sometimes, listeners, if you're diligent and quick-fingered out there on the mouse, but also you can get run over like someone potentially did here on these July 60s. So we sometimes like to point these out as just informative and interesting. And I'm looking at it right now. I'm trying to look at the chain here, see what's going up. I mean, usually when these things are bouncing around like this, you can get some interesting things off for impressive levels. So one to keep an eye on, certainly. But yeah, if they bought these 60s, I feel bad for this. Those are not looking good anytime soon. Let's go on out now. Let's see what else could be looking good, Mr. Rocklop. So let's dial the Wayback Machine. Let's dial it back to May 17th. To the Duck, everyone's favorite, the Duck, a.k.a. the Duke, a.k.a. Duke Energy, but ticker symbol DUK. So I like calling it the Duck, because why not? I won't tell you where it's trading right now. It's a bit of a spoiler, because back on May 17th, we profiled someone who really had to have the June 110s. They came in 4,570 paper, almost lifting the offer for 47 cents. That was about an 18.2 vol. The stock was 104 and change when these went up. And then more continued to pile in throughout the rest of the day. Total about 15,000 traded on the day. So someone really liked themselves those June 110s. They had to have them. They were paying up for them. They wanted to get those bad boys. We've said it before. We'll say it again. When you buy premium like this, particularly aggressive premium, you need something to happen, and you need it to happen pretty quick. And these things continue to trade in subsequent days. We saw, 1,000 trading here, and they're up to like 4,700 trading a couple of days later on the 19th for around 25 cents. So they'll give you a hint of how these worked out. But unfortunately, the stock never really played its part. Someone continued to like these, continued to trade them. The OI continued to creep up after that initial trade day we profiled. But whenever they traded, they were usually for less and less because the stock never really did its thing. It got close. The closest it hit was about 103.25 a week or so into the lifespan of these calls. But that was really about it. It never got close really to that 110 level. Certainly not aggressive enough to make these calls have any life. And when the time expiration rolled around, Mr. Rock Lobster, the stock was below 100, 99.61 to be precise. So unfortunately, the 15,000 or so that we profiled, there were still about 14,000 open at expiration. So these went out worthless, unfortunately. So, and we looked to no one, there was really no size closing paper. There was a little bit of back and forth. So a few could have been taken off, but already for losing prices, they were trading 25 cents a few days later. So that'll give you a hint of how these worked out. So these paper, we have to assume they kind of went out worthless. So you're talking about a little over 200, about 215,000 dropped on that initial nearly 5,000 lot that we profiled. If you add up all the paper on that day, you're looking at close to 700 grand out there. If you add in the nearly 5,000 that someone traded for about 25 cents a few days later, that's another 100,000+ out the window. So you're talking pretty sizable, close to $1 million out the door here, Mr. Rock Lobster. And a name I know you love, the Duck.
The Duck Energy?
The Duck Energy, yes.
Duck Energy. I guess, didn't, who's the heiress? Doris Duke. She was the famous heiress that was a big heiress way back. And then didn't her grandfather fund Duke University? Something like that? Yes, the Scion. Is that, I can never say that word right. Scion.
Scion, yes, a Scion.
Scion, yes. So you look at this again, a pretty good size chunk, alrighty. We got all kinds of size OLA trading here. 40, oh dear, and now, oh man. So maybe they didn't get what they wanted. You're looking at on the fills. They didn't get the push that they wanted, huh? That's kind of a bummer. I don't think this was Doris Duke buying these from the grave, though. I think she owned enough. So I'm going to safely say it was not Doris Duke who bought these calls and lost $115,000.
Yeah, lost a lot. Lost nearly $1 million if you add in all the paper out there. But again, there's some stuff trading back and forth. They could have closed some out. So just on the initial block, at least 200+ thousand, about 215,000, and then more if you add in the rest. Not a good time for the Duck, but it's always a good time for Uncle Mike and a little bit of strategery.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
All right, Uncle Mike, sir, it is time to unleash you upon the masses, your wit and your wisdom. I have it on good authority that today's strategy block is all about your foolproof 5-part system to how to 100% accuracy guess 80s wrestlers' entrance theme music. So have at it, sir. 5 parts.
Okay. Part 1, go with the best tag team of all time, the Road Warriors over Demolition.
Oh, I'm sorry. How did you get muted again? What's going on with your connection over there, sir?
Part 2, we got the belts. You don't like it. We don't care. Part 3, let's talk some options. So a few weeks back on the strategy block, I talked about buying garbage in that, let's say that you have a 4-week put spread that you're short and you're concerned with weekend risk like I typically am. And I'm not saying I do this every time, but just something that you can do. Let's say that you have a put spread, XYZ stocks at 50, and then maybe you're short the 47.42 put spread a couple weeks out, and you're concerned with weekend risk. Well, one thing you can do is you can buy a Monday put spread, the 47.42 put spread. You're just taking the opposite side of the trade, and maybe you can get it for a penny or something like that. And the benefit of that is that if you do that every weekend, then you're essentially getting rid of all risk for that put spread for roughly half the time that it's out there in existence. For 3 of the 7 days, depending on what time you buy it on Friday. and possibly 4 days if you want to count Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So between 40 and 50% of the time is a risk-free trade, and the risk of course, being based upon catastrophe, meaning if the stock were to go down very significantly, then you don't have that risk for almost half the time. And that's something to think about. Not saying that I do that every time, but it is part of my trading toolbox. But today what I want to talk about is how this can work on the opposite side. So right now, let's say that you have a covered call and you're thinking that it's maybe 1 month out, you're long the stock and you're short the call. And you're getting a little bit closer to the short strike price. And you're concerned that the stock might have just a breakout to the upside. And you're thinking, well, you know what, maybe that covered call position that I'm in, I want to protect myself and I want to be able to capture some upside, because I think the upside, I've changed my mind a little bit in that I think the upside might happen possibly before expiration of this call, whereas before I didn't think the upside would happen until after the expiration of this call, but I changed my mind a little bit. Well, the same thing can hold true for buying a protective call to the upside if that's something with which you're concerned. And so let's say that you want to go out maybe a week and your covered call doesn't expire for 3 or 4 weeks. If you can get it at a price that's reasonable, then it's something with which to consider. Now, of course, you have to prepare yourself for the fact that if the stock does nothing, then you're going to be out the garbage premium that you paid for, no question about that, but it might be worth it. And the reason I say that is, let's say that you can get it for such a small price, then you can be away from that upside opportunity risk for a little while. That's something with which to consider. Now, this could also hold true with perhaps a vertical call spread. If you're concerned that the upside, you're going to miss out on the upside in the next few days, well, you can do that. Perhaps it's a bullish butterfly that you have. You could maybe buy a call option at the body of that bullish butterfly. If the butterfly doesn't expire for another 3 or 4 weeks and you're concerned with a near-term upside move, you can do that. Now, understand that you're going to have to pay for that premium. And so the key question that you have to ask yourself every time, that I ask myself whenever I do this, whether it's to the upside or to the downside, what is the risk on this? And can you handle that risk? And the way with which to answer it is, if I like to tell myself, okay, if this is something to where I don't care if I lose a penny, let's say, and oftentimes I'm typically risking a penny for the put spreads that I'll do over the weekend, that doesn't bother me. And if I'm looking to get maybe 50 cents on a put spread for a month and I spend a penny a weekend for the 4 weekends that I do this, when and if I do this, to me, a lot of times that's worth it, because I like being able to sleep at night on weekends. And then the same would hold true as if you're doing this with call option to protect a longer term short call hindrance of your trade, meaning the short call of a call spread or the body of a bullish butterfly or something along those lines. If you're doing it for, say, 1 week and it's a 1 month spread, or a weekend and it's a 2 month spread, whatever the case may be, if you're concerned with that, what does your risk need to be? Well, of course, your risk is the premium that you pay. You have to ask yourself, is that risk worth it to you? And at what point is it? So if I'm going to spend maybe a nickel or a dime on an upside call and it gives me the ability to have that upside, a lot of times that is worth it to me based upon what I'm trying to do with things. So the thing I'd like to just leave everybody with today's strategy block is that if you are going to buy some type of more near-term upside call spread protection, make sure that the risk makes sense to you. And the other reason I'm bringing this up now is that with volatility coming down, if you sold some options maybe 2 months ago or 1 month ago, now that volatility is lower, maybe the cost of doing something like this makes a little bit more sense now. It depends on the stock, it depends on your time frame, and it depends on your strike price. But still, this is something to think about. And that's my strategy block for today.
All right. As we keep on rolling to our final segment, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, we're coming up against. I do see some questions coming in on the live chat. Not going to have time for them today. We'll make sure we get to them on Thursday. Maybe some of them are vol related. Maybe I'll put them to our pro Q&A guest tomorrow as well. Coming up in a little bit, we'll talk about that in a couple of seconds. But first, let's go around the block here. Let's go back to the Rock Lobster, sir. What are you keeping an eye on? What are you watching for the rest of this week outside of the duck, sir?
Outside of the big duck. I don't think we have a lot more room to move in vol. VIX, let's see if it decays away. Today's kind of a bit of a tell. Also, commodities, I don't know, somebody flipped the switch and said, NVIDIA to the moon, all chips to the moon, commodities in the crap heap again. So, all that fluffy we had not long ago is gone in them. So, really just watching those two things and see this infrastructure, we get some kind of building deal out of Washington and all that kind of stuff. So I know it sounds odd, but it's kind of it looks at least the start of an oddly quiet week, but we'll see what happens. But, we got 4th of July next weekend. Good week to get rid of some long calls or long premium if you own it. But, that's kind of what I just see if anything comes of all this.
Indeed. What they say in the old Westerns, it's quiet out there. Too quiet. Is it perhaps too quiet? Or is it just kind of leading into the holiday malaise? We shall find out. Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on for the rest of this week until we can get back together here on Thursday?
Well, like Andrew said, this is the 4th of July, the week before 4th of July. So this could be a pretty quiet week. You never know. SPX did just go positive on the day, so that's always exciting. So watching the 4,300 mark with the SPX to see where we're going with it. And then in terms of the infrastructure deal, it's just more Washington entertainment, quite frankly. But what's scary is how the Washington entertainment does move the market a lot of times. In that first they said they had a deal, then they said they don't have a deal, and then now over the weekend they're saying, yeah, I think we have a deal. So it's very theatrical and entertaining, but we do need to pay attention to that. So keep an eye on that, folks. President Biden, as well as both Democrats and Republicans in Congress, they kind of are in their own world. So keep an eye on it.
DC certainly is its own world out there. But don't worry, listeners, if you hear that music, you're getting a little sad and you need more in your lives. We'll be back a little bit later today. Great guests coming up here. Join me on the crypto rundown, breakdown. There's some madness going up out there in the world of crypto, so we'll break it all down out there in a little bit, about exactly an hour. So if you're listening live, you may rejigger the live stream to get our guests a little bit later. It's probably going to turn that off for now, but we'll be back in about an hour live with crypto. Of course, back again tomorrow, Pro Q&A, one I know a lot of you wanted on the Pro Q&A docket. We got them for you, none other than Don, the man, the short volume legend himself, Schlesinger, going to answer all your questions about whether you should buy or not buy options. I'm going to hint it's going to lean towards the latter. So you got your questions about vol and skew and short, but he's kind of the original almost short vol trader out there. So get us in, get those questions in now. That's going to be a great opportunity. A lot of fun stuff. But before we go, let's go back around the horn. Let's start with the Uncle the Mikes. If folks want to hit you up, give you more of a hard time about your 80s wrestling, Mr. Uncle Mike, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW. I'll be sharing a little bit more of an in-depth blog on today's strategy block a little bit later today. And also go to my website, stcharleswealth.com. And more than happy to work with people. I'm a financial advisor that works with the option product very frequently.
There you go. Uncle Mike TOSAW, stcharleswealth.com is the place to go. And Mr. Rock Lobster, if folks are intrigued, they want to chat with you about the duck, where should they go? What should they do?
They want to chat about the duck or just about anything related to options. Come to optionpit.com. Try our many services. Go to memberships. All kinds of ways to learn about trading here at Option. All kinds of ways to learn about how to trade options. So go to the memberships area, grab a couple of courses. Hey, sit down and learn. Put your option learning on.
Mr. Rocklops, I know you're going to want to tune in for the Don Schlesinger Q&A tomorrow. You're going to join us? You're going to be asking questions of the man, sir?
I could pop in. Do you want me to like Mixler or just you know?
I know you got questions about short vol, so you could hit him up tomorrow. You should just ask him whether he wants to buy or sell vol, and that'll just set him off for the entire hour. There we go.
That would actually just turn your whole. That would be the only question you need for your whole show.
It'd be one Q&A of one tomorrow. So don't let the Rock Lobster hijack it. Get your questions in now. In the meantime, of course, head on over to optionpit.com if you have questions for him and the rest of the crazies over there in the land of the pit. And on behalf of myself and the Rock Lobster, Uncle Mike, thank all of you out there for downloading and streaming and subscribing. If you're listening live, we'll be back in about exactly an hour with the Crypto Rundown. Back again tomorrow, of course, with the Pro Q&A for everybody out there on the pro side of the ledger. Wednesday, your actually Tuesday, we also got the advisors option coming tomorrow too. So you get a double dose of great live content tomorrow for the pros out there and the Pro Plus, or I should say the Options Insider Plus. Wednesday, your double dose of education with OPR and OBC. Dan's back from wherever the heck he was traveling to. Thursday, got episode 2 of the Option Block.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.